Mister, how do you operate this Twitter thing or this Instagram thing or whatever the heck? You're supposed to know all this stuff. Anyway, welcome back to the show.
Well, what you can do is follow us on SNWMN Multimedia and also official SITM. Yes, the old ID is back. Speaking of back, this guy's back this morning to talk AFC West fantasy draft. His name is Kyle Senra, and he joins me right now. What's up, Kyle?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's always great to talk football. You mentioned the word draft. That's coming up in, I guess, exactly a week. Essentially, the draft will
Yes,
be
it is.
Fun time of year.
Yeah. 1 week from this one is the draft. Last week we did the NFC West. Today we will do the AFC West. And what more can you do to start the AFC West than to start with the world champion, the two-time world champion, Kansas City Chiefs? When it looked like they were dead in the water, they went on and won their second straight Super Bowl, looking for a three-peat this year in New Orleans. Where do we start with them?
Well, I think the talk last year was, what are they going to do without a wide receiver? No one was really sure. They had, taken Sky Moore the year before in the second round. We saw that not work out. It was, the same year that they traded away Tyreek Hill. So maybe too much was given to him in terms of responsibility and hope that he would replace Tyreek Hill. Kind of similar to when that one season where Tyreek Hill had the suspension worries and off the field conduct. They drafted McCole Hardman in the second round. A lot of people, a lot of dynasty rookie drafts were taking McCole Hardman far too early, and it seemed like that mistake was repeated with Sky Moore. And then last year, Rashee Rice comes out, and I found, Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, they were like back-end first-round picks in dynasty drafts. In most of my drafts, Rashee Rice was a back-end second, mid-second at best. I ended up winning a fantasy league last year in dynasty where I got Rashee Rice at the 209 in a 14-team league as well. So that late, it seemed like people had been burned enough that they were smarter with Rice, and he was such a value, and he's actually the one that ended up hitting. So now, there's maybe a suspension worry with Rashee Rice. So if they draft a receiver this year, expect that guy to maybe be drafted too early in fantasy, especially since they kind of already addressed the position with Marquise Brown, a guy that has just gone and drawn targets his whole career. There were seasons with, as much as the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews connection was real in Baltimore, there's a couple of those seasons, I think Marquise Brown's second and third season to be precise, where he had more targets than Mark Andrews. So even he was seen, and right from the get-go, that first season, his target pace was basically about where Andrews was. He just ended up having some injuries, and Andrews played the full season, so his numbers were better. But then did the same in Arizona. So I feel like they've got a professional wide receiver they know can run routes, get open, and command enough targets. I don't think he gets more targets than Kelsey. I don't think anyone will on that team as long as Kelsey's there. So he's still the guy you want to target the most. I think Marquise Brown could be a really nice value in fantasy, and maybe this Rashee Rice suspension, though, works against that, and he actually goes earlier in drafts than expected. And I wonder, maybe Rashee Rice goes back to being the value, because I don't know if he is suspended this year. Not a legal expert, but reading those who are, it seems like it would be 2-3 games, not expected to be a 6-game suspension like we have seen for some off-the-field conduct for other players. So Rashee Rice might end up ultimately being the value, but there's 3 great pass-catching options. So just Marquise Brown's presence there this year compared to the team last year, this receiving core, this offense just looks actually better than it did last season. So there could be a bounce-back fantasy season for Mahomes.
Next, we go to Los Angeles, and we look at the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that has a new coach, but still, to me, seems in flux. Your thoughts, sir?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the wide receiver room is I think, the biggest question. Traded away Keenan Allen, moved on from Mike Williams. Right now, they actually only have 4 wide receivers on roster, like total.
Wow.
Which is, so right now, I would argue Josh Palmer, go Canadian, but Josh Palmer, he looks like he's the number 1 wide receiver on this team. And last year, even with rookie Quentin Johnston there, after Mike Williams' injury, and for the couple games where Keenan Allen got hurt, Palmer was going out there and drawing double-digit targets. So I think Josh Palmer is actually going to be a really good value this year. I do expect the Chargers to go wide receiver in the first round. In fact, it almost seems inevitable. Just like I think we talked about that with the Cardinals last week. 4-5 seems locked in for wide receivers. I know there's talk of trading down. I think their needs at wide receiver, coupled with the fact that at that point in the draft, and maybe even from the top of the draft, the two best prospects might be two wide receivers. So,
Mhm.
if they get a chance at Marvin Harrison at 5, I think they'll definitely take it. I imagine the Cardinals go him. That leaves the Chargers with Malik Neighbors. And if he comes in, he's, I think, instantly the number one receiver on this team. And he might go really early in redraft this year. And I think he might be worth it, though. You've got a good quality quarterback like Justin Herbert. You've got a great yards after the catch receiver in Neighbors. And I mean, Quentin Johnson can at least draw attention. You have to cover him. You know, if he's targeted, he's probably going to drop it, but you at least have to cover him. He's a body that you have to account for, because if he does catch it, he actually is really good after the catch. And he's good at getting open. It's just the hands. We've seen receivers work on that. Amari Cooper's career, that was basically the story. One of the best route runners in the league from the get-go, but the hands. And then he really developed that. And like we saw, I felt in Dallas, where his hands became a strength and he was able to make contested catches. And he and Dak worked really well together. I felt he continued that with Cleveland. So not to say Johnson can't develop, but it also usually doesn't happen immediately. Like, it will take him a couple years to really get that hand technique down perfectly, where it's innate and where he's not having to think about it. So I think for now, I expect Josh Palmer will be a value once Malik Neighbors is added to the team. Because there's not really they did moves at tight end, but I'm not really convinced in any of them. I don't really know who to draft there. So Josh Palmer's kind of the guy I want to target. I mean, there was some running back news today. They just added J.K. Dobbins, so the reunion of the Ravens running.
Right.
It's not Jim Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh, not John Harbaugh, but suddenly Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins together. I know that's a rumor that they might draft Blake Corum so that Jim Harbaugh can have his reunion. That seems to make sense. If that's the case, that's kind of a messy three-way committee. I'm not sure who I like the most. I got to say, though, I think right now, I prefer Gus Edwards to Dobbins. I'm just really worried with this injury. Like, how effective will he be coming off it? How soon will he play? We saw a couple years ago, coming off that major ACL injury that happened even before the season, he came back early and then needed a second surgery mid-season. And then finally, the end of the year of 2022 was finally like the first time we really saw J.K. Dobbins look like he did as a rookie. After this Achilles tear, I wonder if it's going to take him maybe that long to look normal again. So he's kind of a guy I'd rather avoid. I think if you're taking a running back right now in the Chargers, I think it's Gus Edwards. What do you think? Do you have an opinion on the Chargers running backs?
I'd say stay away from Dobbins. Stay away from J.K. Dobbins. That injury just doesn't do it. Just worries me. I've seen it too many times before, especially with running back and wide receiver, because you have the question, how well are they going to be if, and that's a big if, they fully recover from the injury? If they fully recover from the injury, A, how effective are they going to be? And B, is the offense and the offensive coordinator and the head coach going to be there to trust him enough to make the plays that he needs to make and be involved in the offense? And with Jim Harbaugh, you know what he wants to do. He wants to pound the rock. He wants to pound the rock. That tells me that signing J.K. Dobbins to a one-year deal, that's a prove-it deal. That's a prove-it deal. Prove you can give me 16 games or 17, should it come down to a playoff spot, and also prove you can get the tough yards that you're used to getting. That's what I feel with J.K. Dobbins.
It's an upside shot, a prospect that was really talented, and a running back that has shown he's really talented in the NFL. But yeah, how much percent of that talent is there? It's probably not 100% of what it used to be, but how much is that diminished? So from the Chargers, it's kind of low risk. Take a shot. We've got Isaiah Spiller as well, which is kind of a late shot guy that looked like a good prospect coming in. Maybe didn't perform as well. The combine fell in the draft and really hasn't gotten the opportunity. But ultimately, Gus Edwards has shown his career to get more carries than we ever expected to. So even if they add Blake Corum or another rookie running back, I still think Gus Edwards might be a really good value. Him and Josh Palmer, I think they're going to be the ways to get to this Chargers offense cheaply. And if everything hits, it could be a really productive offense.
Let's go to Sin City in Las Vegas and look at the Raiders, another offense in flux. They lose Jimmy Garoppolo to the Rams, and I think Garoppolo's going to wind up sitting because of his injury. What do we do? What do they do here? What do the Raiders do with Antonio Pierce in tow to give them that attitude? But along with the attitude, you got to fill out your roster and get some key pieces. What do the Raiders do?
Well, key piece. There's no more key piece to an offense than quarterback. And we hadn't had to talk about Herbert and Mahomes. They're so well established. But right now, it looks like to be a quarterback battle between Aiden O'Connell, the rookie mid-rounder they took last year, and then the free agent signing of Gardner Minshew. you look at the contracts and the money and say Minshew's the favorite to start. But I mean, it from all accounts, it seems like it's going to be a legit competition. If I had to put my money on either side, I would lean Minshew because we've seen him succeed more in the NFL. We did see O'Connell win games, but it almost seemed like they were winning in spite of him. Like they were winning some games where they almost afraid to throw with him at all in the second half. Feels like Minshew gives the team confidence, the receivers confidence. So if I had to pick a winner right now, I would say Minshew. But because the truth is, it is a good spot for a quarterback. You get to throw to Devontae Adams. That's always a bonus. That wide receiver duo of Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, they're going to eat up a ton of targets. But it's going to be high quality targets for the quarterback to go to those two. They can both play outside and in the slot. Seems like a lot of the formations last year when they needed to go to two wide receivers and extra players at other positions, Myers would stay on the field. But in three wide receiver sets, they do like playing him in the slot, which gives he's had so much success there in his career. It gives the quarterback an easy open target. Devontae Adams, doesn't matter where he lines up, he always gives the quarterback an easy open target. There's still maybe no receiver better in the league still at just getting open on an instant, that separation at the point of attack. It's what made it so successful in Green Bay. A lot of it's just footwork off the line of scrimmage. He's still maybe the best at getting off the line. These young kids, as talented as they are, they can still learn a thing or two from Devontae Adams. So
absolutely,
if Minshew wins the job, I think he has probably a low floor quarterback, but high weekly upside. You get into a game, you throw 2-3 touchdowns to Devontae Adams, that really boosts his fantasy value. He's also mobile enough that he can run in some touchdowns. We saw that last year with the Colts. He was a very boomer bust quarterback after replacing Richardson. He could have some spike weeks, but if he didn't score a bunch of touchdowns, he wasn't really giving you too much. So he's going to run to get touchdowns, but he's not really running to gain a lot of yards and get that safe, solid floor. So it's super, like he's not, I don't think in one QB formats are taking the risk this late, but in super flex formats, both quarterbacks could be worth drafting. Now, the one thing that could change is the Raiders could just draft a quarterback, and then suddenly, especially in the first round, it puts a lot of pressure to play that guy right away. If they go and get Michael Penix in the first round or Bo Nix, there's temptation to maybe just play the first rounder. So all this could be for naught, but it does seem like at least the team around is established. They drafted Michael Mayer last year as a tight end. It usually takes tight ends time. As much as a bunch of rookies hit last year, he was one of the few that didn't. But that's mostly the expectation. So I think let's see what Michael Mayer does in year 2. I don't want to be over aggressive and draft him, but he's certainly not off my board in spite of the poor rookie season. At running back, Zamir White looks like the lead guy right now. If they draft somebody, to be honest, I don't love this class to the point where I think even if they draft a guy in the 3rd round, Zamir White might still be the better back. I don't like, in dynasty leagues, I've been thinking about, do I trade for him now? His price might go up after the draft, but at least there'll be certainty to know who else his competition is. But I think once he gets through the draft, and even if they do draft a running back, I think he'll be a good draft value because I expect he'll get most of the carries. I've heard Alexander Madison is the guy that buried Zamir White. I think Alexander Madison was brought in because of everything else on the team. You've got I think now a 33-year-old Brandon Bolden. And I mean, we saw 33-year-old Latavius Murray do well, but in his prime, Latavius Murray was much better than Brandon Bolden has ever been in his career. So that's not much you can rely on. And it seemed like they never wanted to give Amir Abdullah carries. He's more a 3rd down specialist only. So Alexander Madison seems like he's a guy that's brought into, you're going to eat sort of the cheap carries between the 20s when we need you to. But I feel like Zamir White is not quite a workhorse back, but he's going to have that sort of 3-down role because you can trust him. Maybe you don't fully trust him on pass catching downs, and that's why Amir Abdullah is there. But I think he'll get enough receptions just being on the field. They didn't really design Josh Jacobs' routes ever in the offense. He played so many snaps that he's just going to catch dump-off passes just by virtue of being out there. Even with Gardner Minshew slinging it, eventually he will dump down to his running backs too. So Zamir White, I think, is still – I don't know. I don't really see a back in this class that just replaces his role. Maybe a 50-50 split at most, but I'm pretty sure Zamir White's going into the season as the Raiders' #1 running back. Do you like – am I overstating him or underestimating this rookie class?
No, not at all. Not at all. Zamir White's going to be their #1 back going into the season. I mean, you have to replace the production of Josh Jacobs, period. Injury or no injury, Josh Jacobs was their guy for 4 to 5 years. And, of course, you mentioned Gardner Minshew coming from the Colts. Minshew was so close to winning them an AFC South title if it weren't for one missed pass with a minute to go in the 4th quarter against Houston. So he has the ability. And I would lean toward Minshew to be the starter also. I would lean toward Minshew to be the starter. With Minshew, you play to win. Shane Steichen proved it last year. With O'Connell, you play not to lose. And you don't want to do that. I mean, the 49ers went through it. With Garoppolo, you play not to lose. And with Brock Purdy, you let him sling it.
It's funny. It was the opposite, though. The young kid was the more confident one. Not quite sure that's the case here. It does seem like the veteran gets that. Do you think they'll draft a quarterback? I'm leaning no, but it's the Raiders.
You know what? I think if they do draft a quarterback, it won't be in the first round. I just don't think it'll be in the first round because most of the first round big name quarterbacks will be gone.
Unless they're trading up, and giving up a lot. Doesn't seem like they're the team to do that. They'll, to be honest, if they really want to fix the defense, there's so many offensive players going. I think they pick 13th. There's a chance maybe one or two defensive players has gone off and they get their choice of basically like the third best defensive player overall at really any position. They have the luxury of their defense not having enough talent everywhere that they could take any player in the first round. It wouldn't be a positional reach. Anyone who would be the best defensive player available probably fits into their team right away as a need. Because Max Crosby is amazing, but if you take another edge rusher, that's great because you can alleviate pressure off Max Crosby. So
Yep. Speaking of talent being needed everywhere, there's these guys, the Denver Broncos. I feel for the Broncos for two reasons. One, just 2015, they were world champions. They win Super Bowl 50, and then they dropped off the face of the earth. And a lot of that coincided with Peyton Manning retiring. A lot of that coincided with Peyton Manning, stepping away and retiring. They haven't had a quarterback. They haven't had anything since then. Where do you start with the Denver Broncos?
Well, I guess the question is, should they have actually signed Brock Osweiler that year? Because they let both of their quarterbacks walk, and Osweiler is pretty awful. So it kind of looked like, okay, it's good they didn't spend a bunch of money on him, but would he have been good enough to sustain them some success? But I mean, Jared Stidham is currently the quarterback. This feels like a team that's destined to go QB. And to earlier point of why the Raiders might not go quarterback is because 5 might have already gone because the Broncos pick ahead of them. So
yep,
I think they will go QB in the first round. So maybe they get Michael Penix. Does JJ McCarthy fall? Does Sean Payton actually like Bo Nix because of the accuracy and the quick passing? It seems like that's being knocked. Oh, there's so many dump offs. Hey, Drew Brees had a Hall of Fame career throwing dump off passes in a Sean Payton offense. So maybe he used Bo Nix.
Drew Brees had a Hall of Fame career. Steve Young had a Hall of Fame career. Hell, if you really want to think about it, Joe Montana had a Hall of Fame career dumping off to Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones, Roger Craig, Tom Rathman. He did most of those on dump-off passes. The key was the guys had the ability to take it the rest of the way. If you go back to 1989 and look at the second series that Montana had against the Minnesota Vikings, he threw a 4-yard pass to Jerry Rice. What did Jerry Rice do? He took it the distance.
And, I mean, they might have that guy in the rookie they took last year, Marvin Mims. It was actually, they didn't have a first rounder in 2023. So that ended up actually being Sean Payton's first pick for the Broncos. So it looks like based on their depth chart now, he's going to have a role. They signed Josh Reynolds as their big free agent signing. Cortland Sutton still looks to be the one. And, maybe they go wide receiver in the first round and then address QB later. Yeah. Maybe that rookie wide receiver ends up being the one. But outside of going 12th overall with one, I'd expect Cortland Sutton to be the number one receiver, at least for 2024. But Mims could feature in. They didn't really use him much last year, but I wonder if his role expands now with Jerry Jeudy going. So I would lean that they go QB at 12, like I said. I think again, one of the things that's being knocked with Bo Nix is how old he is. Sean Payton might view that as a bonus in that he's not a project. He is what he is now. He's shown, and there might not be more of a ceiling, but he might also be one of the safest floors of any quarterback. I think his ceiling is so low, though. That's why he's often viewed as like the 6th best QB or maybe 5th best QB. I wonder if the Broncos really like that and they just take him at 12 because they don't want to risk it. And Sean Payton thinks he's got all this experience. Of all the QBs in this class, he threw the most touchdowns in college over the course of his career. It was 114 or something, even more than Caleb Williams. So Sean Payton might look at Bo Nix and say he's ready right now. There's the learning curve won't be as steep for him as a rookie. We're drafting him at 12 overall and we're playing him right away. And hoping that he and Mims and Sutton can create that magic that they're looking for. I guess tight end is interesting because Sean Payton brought over his guy, Adam Troutman. The previous regime drafted Greg Dulcich.
Mhm.
And Troutman didn't do much last year, and Dulcich was hurt a lot of the year, so we didn't really get much of an answer. Again, maybe if with the absence of Jerry Jeudy, it means just more targets for everyone. So maybe we get a more clear, defined top tight end. Again, maybe Bo Nix seems like a guy that he would go to the tight end often, dumping down.
Yeah.
It might, I guess they'll design enough for Sutton, but I do wonder if it does hurt Sutton in the long run. And I mean, running back's interesting. They've really got three guys. Like, it feels like, again, this class doesn't seem strong enough to the point where there's so many holes with the rest of Denver's roster. They could go without drafting a running back in this class and feel fine. Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin. Seems like they really like Perine as their third down pass catching back.
Mhm.
A year removed from ACL injury that Williams suffered in 2022. I wonder if we see a better Javonte Williams this year than we did last year. I'd certainly rather invest in him this season than would have drafted. I was kind of avoiding him last year. This year, he went through the whole season, didn't get re-injured. Feel like he's going to have an off season to now not be rehabbing, but get stronger and better. So while these other guys are there, I could also see them just riding with Javonte Williams as maybe a true workhorse back. So I do still like Javonte Williams. We'll see this year. This kind of make or break. I believe it's the final year of his rookie contract.
Mhm.
Or he might want to have one more. I can't remember, but he's getting close to that, needing that second contract. So maybe a big year coming up for him.
We will see what happens. Those are your AFC West fantasy draft projections with my buddy Kyle Senra. Beginning next week, we're going to take some questions from the fans, see what they think, and make this more involved. And yes, I've listened to people, and we're going to do a fantasy league here on the program and through Snowman Multimedia. And Kyle, I'm going to need your help to guide me through that.
Sure,
And
I can co-commission with you. Yeah, I'll help you out.
thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We got a lot more after this.